Hey, everybody. So, in today's episode of Get Rich Slow, we're going to talk about, among other things, paying yourself. We were talking separately on our own, not separately on our own, but together on our own without you guys. We are just discussing the conventional wisdom of not paying yourself or taking out any money from your business for the first 2 years, 2 to 5 years, even.
Mhm.
Which I'm sure that's hugely variable depending on what you're doing for a business and how much overhead you have and all these things. So I had never heard that. Alice brought it up. And all I can say is I wasn't paying myself for a long time, and then I decided that wasn't right. So I started doing that. And there was just a different dynamic once I started paying myself, however little it was. And at the time I was working a day job. I was very financially secure, very good job. Um, so I didn't really need to take a cut from the business. So I thought, oh, I'll just grow it really fast and reinvest everything. And that's not really how it works, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and I've always paid myself from the business. So, which it's grown more slowly, possibly. It's kind of like we were talking about this earlier. It's hard to know because
Mhm.
obviously we don't know what would have happened if I'd have, moved because I moved, and so my original sources of employment were, geographically not sustainable. So I just quit and I did the business. So but it's I think that for me, by needing to make money off of the business, and I didn't always make the smartest choices. For a while, I was taking too much out. So I've kind of juggled over the years as to the percentage that I take out of my um, the business income. So, and there have been times where I have cut that a little too close. So I'm like, okay, you need to back it up a little bit. And a lot of it really depends. There's a lot of different things. Just like Seneca said, it depends on your overhead and what type of thing. For most of what I do, I don't have a ton of overhead. I've recently really given up my office. I had a separate office where I would meet with clients one on one, and I no longer have that. So that was I think my biggest single expense every year was that. So and my plan at this point is not necessarily to take that for myself. It's now to think about, okay, how can I advertise more or do other things so that's kind of investment seed money. And then it was also partly when I first, we've talked about in other videos. So I've recently hired a few people. So that was also kind of my hiring somewhat buffer. So, but I've not needed to touch that. So I'm back to my original plan of using that as investment and kind of either advertising or that type of thing, that income. There's um, there's been a shift that's happened even with that. I think there's overall just how you use money in your business makes a difference. So, and
Mhm.
it's bigger than the dollars and the cents. I don't, and
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to tell you how that is or exactly what happens. We've tried to quantify it and we're just not.
Yeah. Well, like for me, I wasn't paying myself. And so I was reinvesting everything back into the business. So I was actively looking for ways to spend that money and to put it into growth, which is good to an extent, but if you're just trying to chuck money out the door to grow as fast as possible, you're not making smart decisions there either. And if you're underpaying yourself and you're at too low of a percentage to really make ends meet, then you're not gonna make smart decisions with that either.
Mhm.
So it really is just a weird dynamic of finding that sweet spot.
Mhm.
I do the percentage method too. I don't give myself a flat salary. So, if I have a lean month, then I'm gonna have to kick it up a notch. But
Yeah.
I haven't had to because it just works.
Mhm.
But if you haven't been paying yourself, you don't want to course correct really quickly. And I teach this in
Mhm.
our full class. I went very incrementally. I started paying myself 1%. And the next quarter, I went up to 2%. So it's like basically nothing, but something changed in that time period. So, and that's what I was trying to explain to Alice. Like, I don't know what happened, and I can't quantify it, and I can't explain, but I believe something different happened because I started paying myself. So,
Mhm. Yeah. And that's when I finally kind of found that sweet spot for me. Um, then there's been a big shift. So, and also just in I follow Dan Kennedy quite a bit, among others, but I read a book. I don't remember what it's called, and I don't have it on my shelf right there. Um, he talks about money in like a completely different way than I've ever really heard it talked about. And he's the first person coming from a secular perspective. I mean, I don't know what his beliefs are, but just in, where when I've heard him speak on this topic and in the book, he's talking about giving from a completely secular point of view, just in a way of um, opening up the um, kind of the conduits for money to flow. Because he talk and he almost talks about money as if it's a sentient thing, like it likes things, it doesn't like other things. So that was one of the things that in my just kind of my own life, I always had done these things before, and then I stopped, and that didn't help. So when I read, and I'm like, okay, well, why don't I just, pick a percentage and we're just going to start and set aside. He recommends 3 different accounts, and that's what I've done: one for investing, one for savings, and one for giving. And you can choose any percentage greater than 0
yeah.
to begin them. And, he's got kind of other recommendations as well. But as soon as I started doing that, then there was a huge shift in my business, and I didn't do anything else. So it's not like I also, ran a bunch of ads or did a lot of different things. There was no other um, way to explain it. But kind of um, my and I pay myself twice a month. So, and it's somewhat cyclical. Um, just because there's more things that come in at the beginning of the month and other things are more sporadic. But my lows are now higher than my highs used to be. So I'm not always doubling my income, but nearly. And that was that started happening nearly immediately. So
Mhm.
I would have, people just called, wanted me to work on their books or whatever. Like, it's just been a really interesting, oh, okay. So, in the church, we hear about the tithe all the time as opening up the floodgates of heaven and all the spiritual kind of things to it. And for me, and I had always tithed before, and I had never, it just was very interesting to me that he was talking, basically, he was giving many of the same arguments for tithing or giving, but without the religious
Right.
aspect of
Yeah.
it. Like, the reason why God asks us to do that is because it benefits us. And that is so true of nearly everything that he asks us to do. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is going to be really good for you. Why don't you do this? And we're like, no, I don't want to do that. He's like, please, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
remember when it dawned on me that it wasn't just a bunch of rules, it was actually for your benefit to do these things.
mhm, yeah. And for me, like the Sabbath, like that I've been doing that for what, 25 years or something like that now. Not always, and we've talked about that before, not super religious about it or whatever, but I have observed Sabbath like times. So yeah, but why for me, like the financial piece of it was, and I think there's a lot of kind of, we have to wrap our mind around the fact that God is doing this for our benefit. It's not so that he doesn't smack us upside the head. And that, he's like, hey, don't make me hit you.
Yeah.
That isn't what he's doing. It's like, hey, your life will be better. This is the way things work, and will work in for your benefit and everybody's benefit if you follow these things. So, but
Yeah. And see, I'm not going to say I'm anti-tithe, but I don't think that's where it's at. That's not the be all end all. But I think there's something to giving in lots of places. And that, I think, is where we go wrong with the tithe, is we give to our one church, the place that we go if we go to church, or wherever that is, and you give there and that's it. And
and for me,
I don't think that's right.
yeah, no, and for me, I've always like just given wherever I felt like God wanted me to give. So, there are some hangups that I didn't have to overcome.
Mhm.
But and that's kind of one of the things that Dan Kennedy said, that he uses his giving fund to overtip people when he travels. So, which he doesn't do much traveling anymore, so I haven't heard an update on that. I guess he tipping the gas station attendant $1,000. I don't know. But that was one of the things on a recent trip that I did, and it was great fun. So to have just had a stack of 20s in my purse and slip them under the thing, in addition to the tip, like that was just an added bonus when I felt like God was like, hey, her. So okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Well, and it was kind of funny that you said the floodgates of heaven, because I had always I didn't connect this until just now. I was always seeing money as a river. And it's not something that you want to keep stagnant or dammed up.
mhm.
You have a free flow through. You have all the tributaries that feed it, and then you've got all the little areas where
Mhm.
it's trickling out of, and then back into evaporation, the ocean, wherever. So
Yeah.
versus like a lake where it's very self-contained, or even a lake has flowing out, but
Yeah.
ponds maybe, I don't know.
The Dead Sea for sure, no. Hence its deadness. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the murky algae water. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not what you want.
Well, and that's one of the things that and I can't remember, there's a Rabbi Daniel Lapin, and he has a good book on I think it's called Thou Shall Prosper. And he talks about that part of what giving does is that it like digs a tunnel out so that money can flow back in. And it's the same thing like you're talking about. It's an intentional outflow so that there is now a channel available for money to return to you. So, which I just find that fascinating. I can't quite wrap my head around it. I'm seeing it in action, but I'm still just not going.
Yeah.
So, but that's
Well, yeah, it's figuring out all your little percentages of how much of what, and we do have this in our class,
mhm.
like ballpark numbers that you shoot for, but again, you steer the ship there very, very slowly,
Yeah.
because whatever you've been doing, your business is kind of dependent on that.
Mhm.
So,
And I think when you try and make large changes too quickly, chances are good you're going to have to block that back, and then that feels bad.
yeah, it does.
So and part of, so then it makes you feel like a smaller person. It makes you feel more insignificant and less worthy of anything good. So when you start out small, and then you gradually increase that, and that's what I've done. I've started out small, and my plan is to continue to increase as I can, and as that's sustainable, because I've done that back and forth thing. So, and it isn't fun. It makes you feel bad. You haven't been able to keep a promise to yourself. So that's or other people, either way, it's you'd kind of think that not keeping a promise to yourself wouldn't feel as bad as not keeping a promise to somebody else, but it's equally damaging, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, I would just look at that and go, "Oh, I failed. I was going to do this thing," and
yeah, and that's
that would be it more so than
yeah,
not keeping my promise. Like, well, I tried and this did not work.
yeah, and there are so many things when you kind of and we so often get what we look for and look at. So if we're looking
Yeah.
at failure, we're looking at lack, we're looking at, struggle, then that seems to be where we get stuck. So by intentionally, and again, very, very small, like 0.25% is more than zero, or, like whatever it is, just,
I mean, it feels ridiculous at first, but
yeah. Yeah, like, well, what on earth is, $3 gonna do, or whatever it is, it's like, okay. But it just, and again, I can't explain it because I don't understand it, but it makes a big difference.
I think for me it was like gravy because,
Mhm.
it's money on top of my salary that I already had, which is what I was living on.
Mhm.
And there was potential for that to get bigger all the time.
Mhm.
It was a nice thought.
Yeah. Increases generally always
Yeah.
a good thing.
Well, I think when you did it allowed me to really buy some great things,
Mhm.
for the business even because, before I left my job, well, no, it was after I left my job, but I had all of that money stacked up because I was too busy to spend it for one thing. So then I bought a facility. So that is my big
Yeah.
purchase was property with a building and a garage on it. And
Mhm. Yeah, and since you've done that, your business has gone crazy.
yep.
So,
And I was scared, but yeah, it's been fine.
mhm. Yeah.
So now I got to get over my next big purchase and stop being scared. And yeah,
Yep.
because it's always fine. I've done the percentage thing with my money for I can't even tell you how long. Maybe since I was a kid to some extent. So
Mhm. Yeah. And
yeah.
that's, for me, I'm getting back to where I was. So
Hmm.
slowly again.
Well, and I can't even remember what I teach in the class, but there's like a lot of accounts. Like you were saying before, the
Mhm.
3 different accounts. I think there might be 4. I think that's what I have in my bank account right now. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, you allocate your money, and there
Mhm.
are money market funds now that you can set up too. So you're making at least a little bit better interest on that because those aren't really accounts that you get into all the time. So
Yeah, especially like the investment or
yeah.
the savings to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things with the investment accounts, I mean, it's really, really good to do that dollar cost averaging, just like you would if you were in a day job contributing to your 401k.
Mhm.
You've got that regular payment going in there no matter what the stock market is doing. You invest that money because it's only going to go up over time. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing when you're in business.
Mhm.
You just have to be a little more conscientious about it because it's not just a matter of you filling out a form and them doing the rest of it. It's you actually
You
have
have
to,
to transfer the money. Yeah.
yeah, and figure out what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
where you're gonna put it, but
Yeah.
yeah. You need to do that. You need to look after your own retirement accounts, so,
Absolutely.
yeah. This is your weekly kick in the butt to go do it.
All righty. Well, we will talk to y'all next time.